Hello, I have the pleasure of being with Larry Sindass this evening. Welcome, Larry. How are you?
I am doing well, and thank you for having me on this program. Looking forward to it.
I am too. Larry, I want you to share with our community the Larry that we would like to know more about. So that gives you ample room here to, boast up yourself a bit.
It's interesting, but I'm usually on the opposite side of that world to boost up myself. But what can I say? I was born in Jamaica. Came to the US when I was about 20. Came to go to University of the District of Columbia to do my undergrad studies. Did that, graduated with a bachelor's degree in film and cinematography. And then I went on to American University to do my master's in film and video production. And been working ever since at a television station here in Washington called WUSA Channel 9, a CBS affiliate. And during that time, in fact, the same year I started working at Channel 9, I started Carib Nation. And it's a public affairs TV program that focuses on the Caribbean population, not just in the diaspora, but also in the Caribbean region. And we cover everything relating to the Caribbean lifestyle, politics, culture, music, food, whatever that has a linkage with the Caribbean community, we cover it. And we've been doing it for now 27 years, and it's still going strong. We have produced over almost 900 episodes over that time, and we're in various markets throughout the world. We are in the Caribbean in 22 islands, and the English-speaking Caribbean. We're in North America, in Canada, United States, and we're also in Europe, in England, on cable. Plus, in addition to that, YouTube channel has given us a platform that takes us global. So we have a YouTube channel, Carib Nation, that is seen all over the world. And I tell you, one of the big audience share we have for our YouTube channel is out of Japan, of all places. So we have quite a lot of viewers on the far eastern side of the world. I'm married to the love of my life, Dr. Sindass, and we have one child, Tatiana, and we live here in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And everything else is cool.
Larry, what inspired you to produce Carib Nation or to create?
Yeah, we started 27 years ago, and the reason we got into it was a small group of three people, me, my Cedric Franklin, and a lady by the name of Aisha London. We basically was just toying around with the idea of doing a program that gives Caribbean people a voice, give Caribbean people their perspective on things. Because at the time, when you look at television in the American television world, whenever you see a program or a news clippings of often about the Caribbean, it's usually not in a positive way. It's usually covering either some violence going on, some destruction by hurricane, and or something that is not a positive thing to show Caribbean people as the leaders and giants that we are. It's always something to tear us down. And so we decided to say, look, I have a degree in film and TV. I can put together a program that can give Caribbean people a voice, that can give Caribbean people the opportunity to set the message straight. to take this, and in today's world, there's this thing called misinformation or disinformation. That was pretty much what was going on back then that we see was affecting the Caribbean community. And so we said, let's create a program that gives us Caribbean people living here in the Washington, D.C. area a voice, a place that we can actually gather, get some guests on from the Caribbean to put perspective on issues that the average mainstream media in America will never talk about, will never showcase. And so we started that, and we started at the University of DC. Interestingly enough, my undergrad, when I approached them with the idea, they weren't so favorable about the idea. It seems a little, to them, the program was too niched, too ethnic, as I think I remember what the gentleman said to me. But then I realized that, if you're going to get something, you have to give something. So what I did was I made an arrangement to train UDC students in TV studio production in exchange for using their facility. And it worked. They sign on with that, and they grant us the opportunity to produce the program at UDC. And we started producing. Our first program back then was a program about Cuba. And we looked at the Cuban Revolution, we looked at Castro and the rise of Castro, and we also looked at where Cuba is heading post-revolution. And we did it at the time. Most of the programs we produced were done in an hour length. We have since cut back on a half-an-hour slot because once we got expanded in terms of an audience share, the program, a lot of the distributors who wants to carry our show could not accommodate a full hour. Mm-hmm. So in fact, the reason we switched from 1 to half an hour was we made an arrangement with PBS in DC at Howard University to carry the program, and they could only accommodate a half an hour slot. So we made the decision to cut the show back half an hour, and it actually works better. Discussions are faster. It's more entertaining. It moves a little quicker. We get to the meat of the issue faster, and we cover quite a lot in a very short time. I think the attention span of people over the years have changed, and even today, people don't watch TV for a full half an hour or full hour. They're just gonna click in for a few minutes and click out. So we have evolved with the change in how the culture of how people watch television has evolved, and so we moved from a full hour to a half an hour, and it actually worked well. But so we've been doing programs for over 27 years. We started at UDC, we expanded into PBS in DC, and then from there we springboard into the Caribbean market, and we're in 22 countries. Our main distributor in the Caribbean is Carib Vision out of Barbados, and programs are aired throughout the Caribbean prime time on Sundays. I think it's Eastern Caribbean time is at 6:30 p.m. and it's repeated throughout the week at various times. And so again, just to summarize the questions you asked, the reason we started is to give Caribbean people living outside the Caribbean a voice, a place that they can actually present information that is about building, developing, uplifting our nation, rather than focusing so much on the bad things. We know bad things happen everywhere. It happens in the Caribbean too.
Yes.
If you focus on the good, we can actually change the bad things. If you focus on the bad things, that's all people are going to see. And there's no hope for any change. But bring in some good news into the mix and you'll see changes happen.
So Larry, we may have missed it in your initial comments. Your birthplace is Jamaica, correct?
Yes.
And so that probably personifies the who of Larry Sindass. And as you have allowed us to see through Carib Nation, you have given more than just one one-sided view of the Caribbean. You have more or less encompassed it all. And we had a previous discussion, and I think one of the remarks you made, it was so poignant to me, was that we here recognize ourselves more as a Caribbean entity. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, and thanks for alluding to that. Yeah, and I'm glad you acknowledge that, and which is one of the things that we try hard to do is if we're going to create a Caribbean program, which of course the program is called Carib Nation. We're not going to just focus on Jamaica. We're not going to just focus on Trinidad or Barbie. We're going to focus on every entity within the Caribbean region, not just English-speaking entities or countries, but Spanish, etc. And so to get to what you just mentioned about the Caribbean-ness of the people coming out of the Caribbean living in diaspora. You know, when I was home in Jamaica, when I grew up, I spent first 20 years of my life there. If anyone comes to you and asks you about who, you know, identify yourself, one of the first things that will come out from my mouth is I'm a Jamaican, plain and simple. I still say that today, but ever since I've been here in the diaspora, ever since I've been here in Washington, D.C., when people ask me more so where I'm from, the first thing that comes out is I'm from the Caribbean. More so than saying I'm from Jamaica. Jamaica comes second to that. Not to say that, you know, my love for Jamaica is number two. It's still tops. But what has happened when you come from a region and you start living amongst other members of a shared culture, of a shared, you know, group of people that has so much similarity, is that you begin to identify yourself in them. And that group is the Caribbean community here. We shared so much similarity. So much in our food is similar. So much in our culture, our music, our dance, in the way we talk, in the way we tell stories of how we grew up. It is so similar, and these are similar things that make you identify with each other even stronger. Which kind of, you know, it's kind of interesting because probably even today it's still happening. If a person in the Caribbean, say from Trinidad or Jamaica, is asked, you know, where you're from, they certainly say they're from their, you know, individual countries. But it takes you to get out of that system and be placed in a melting pot of Caribbean people for you to see the big picture that you are fundamentally a Caribbean person, and instinctively you're from an individual island. So I see that not just with me, but I take it is the same with you. You being from Trinidad,
yes, indeed.
you identify yourself.
And with Trinidad being represented as Trinidad and Tobago to our audiences, one of the ideas I also would like for you to elaborate on is the just as you were saying, that as we identify ourselves as a Caribbean entity, we are more powerful that way in terms of our collective. And so in the US, we now have what is a designed month, Caribbean National Heritage Month. And so I'll invite you, Larry, to speak to that. And was that part of your path in terms of Carib Nation helping to put a focus on the Caribbean extended communities, let's say in the DMV area?
Right, absolutely. And again, there was a reason we call the program Carib Nation, Caribbean Nation.
Yes.
One. And if you look at our motto, it's one culture, one Caribbean, one people, one nation. And the idea behind that is that, yes, the oneness is so strong amongst us because we share so much values and so much things that are similar. That in itself was one of the elements that helped to push the drive to create the Caribbean American Heritage Month. We work very closely with other entities within the Caribbean community, not just here in the DMV, but in New York and other parts of the country to help create this national month holiday. It was a holiday, month of activity and calling it Caribbean Heritage Month. Certainly, I work very close with ICS and Dr. Claire Nelson, who is one of the champions to push for this, as well as some others out of New York and so on. But the idea of a Caribbean month to celebrate and to showcase what Caribbean people in North America, in the United States, have been doing since they have migrated to live amongst this melting pot of beautiful people. We have contributed significantly in every way. We have built and continue to build industries in the United States. We have contributed in education. Some of the most incredible scholars in the world today are from the Caribbean. And one person just come to mind, CLR James from Trinidad and Tobago, an incredible mind.
As is our now Dr. Frederick at the head of Howard University, as exactly. He's now exiting from that role.
Exactly. Dr. Fred Frederick, who is now exiting from being the president of Howard University. Incredible mind. And those are just two of many. You look at music, some of the most powerful musicians globally, they're right here. There are groups from the Caribbean, there are groups from all over the world, but the message in their music has always been to unify. And that has transcended not only America, but it has transcends the world. Our food is unsurpassed. It has created impact and has fusion throughout other foods. You know, there's nothing better than, you know, the stuff we cook. And Trinidad has, you know, the doubles, you know, the roasted. Jamaica has our jerk and our oxtail and all that good stuff. That is now becoming a vibrant part of the U.S. culinary scene. Mm-hmm. So our infusion and our impact is widespread. And the best way to communicate what we have created, of what we have impacted upon the broader American society, is to make sure we celebrate it at least in a month, once a year. Not that we can't celebrate it every day, which we certainly do. But when we draw attention to a particular month, we make everyone else understand and acknowledge that we're here to build, we're here to grow, and we're here to form communities that will prosper everybody. We're not what people think. There are some people who think as immigrants, you will always be an immigrant. We have evolved. And even when we make a decision to come to the United States to live, we just don't come here thinking we're going to live off the system. That doesn't happen. We help to rebuild the system, enforce the system, grow the system. We are a vital part of development in this country, and that needs to be understood by everybody. And I'm so glad we have a month, but we can at least do 30 days, 31 days of promotion of what we are in this
society.
Yeah.
So Larry, let me ask you this. Having been at the, at the front, pioneering Carib Nation for over 26 years, I'm sure you've had some of those interviews and experiences while doing the show that have stuck with you. Can you share a couple of those with us?
Yeah, I certainly can. And let me back up a little bit and just acknowledge some of the people that worked on the show with me, because I'm usually behind the scene. I'm not the face of Carib Nation. The face of Carib Nation are these incredible journalists that I've been able to put together over the years. You're talking people like David Hine, a political scientist who now works at Arizona State University. He's from Guyana. Darius Dean, an incredible journalist. Once had a show on Voice of America. She's from Barbados and Guyana. Paul Tennessee, another political scientist. Ambassador Curtis Ward, who is a fixture in the DMV and is basically a walking encyclopedia of what it is to be a Caribbean person, a Jamaican Caribbean person. We have Cedric Franklin, a radio personality. We have um, Abby Charles, who is an incredible, talented journalist. Although she don't class herself as a journalist, but she is, because she knows how to get to the meat of an issue. We have Monique McSween, an incredible communicator, and does some incredible programs for us and with us. And the list goes on and on. Dr. Golda Downer, and also my wife, Dr. Lisa Sindass, who does primarily our health focused programs. So all these folks together help to create, and let me not forget Mr. John Blake, the legendary John Blake, who does a lot of our entertainment feature. But these are the people, their talent comes with their name, because they've spent years in the business building a repertoire of great storytelling, of great insight into politics, insight into culture, insight into sociology and stuff like that. And they bring to the table some incredible conversation about what it is to be a Caribbean person living in North America, what it is to be a Caribbean person experiencing the life we experience both in the Caribbean region as well as here. And as we traversed, and we have produced since 27 years we have been on, we have produced some incredible interviews and some incredible shows. One of them that come to mind that had a profound impact on me was an interview we did with former Prime Minister Edward Seaga of Jamaica. At the time, Mr. Seaga was the leader of the upper opposition, and he was pretty much close to retirement. But in the Caribbean, folks don't retire, especially in politics. They stay around. And during that interview, David Hines was the interviewer, and he asked the question to Mr. Seaga, is like, he has spent over 44 decades, in representative politics. When is it that you think you can retire, or are you entertaining the thought of retiring? And in a profound way, Mr. Seaga said to David, he has not found anyone to replace him. And that just got me thinking there, that here we have an incredible representative democracy in Jamaica. Leaders are represented by people going to the poll to vote. But that's not the case. Our leaders are pre-selected for us, and we basically decide if we want to put them in or put the other one in. We have two main political parties, and those leaders of those parties are pre-selected by a group of members of that party. The Jamaican people don't have any say into that. All they have a say into is, okay, which of the two are you going to pick? And a lot of time, you actually don't pick the leader because you vote in a constituency, in a parliamentary constituency. You pick a representative from your area. And if the tallies is more than the other party, then that person who was picked as the leader of that party becomes the prime minister. And that person has now powers to manage a country. And therein lies, to me, one of our problems. We should get the opportunity. We should have a more direct say in who our leader is, because the leader is so important in making sure that the direction that we are moving is the direction that the people want us to move. Because the country, the government is not necessarily a body of people in the offices held by the government. The government of any country is the people. And when the people don't get a chance to pick their leader, something may not be turning out the right way. And in my opinion, for the longest while, ever since I've been following politics, especially in Jamaica, this has been the system that has been in place, where people actually did not pick the person to represent them as the leader. They basically just picked a party, and the party leader represent us as a prime minister. I think it's pretty similar in other parts of the Caribbean, but my own drawback on that is I think we lose out on the young, vibrant community of leadership that could emerge if the people get to pick who they want to represent them as their leader. Because if you look at leadership over the last 50 years or so since independence, 60 years or so, most of these leaders are pretty much past their 50s.
60s, 70s, almost into your 70s, yes.
Into your 70s. And a lot of them brought with them a system of managing the country that they have developed from way back.
Yes.
And a lot of them are very stubborn to adjust to change, which in my opinion, if you're stubborn to adjust to change is going to be changing without you. And you're going to get left behind. And if you look at the region right now, a lot of these countries, a lot of these islands, a lot of these nations are being left behind. They're not moving at the pace that it's needed to keep them abreast with development, especially moving from the third world category that we have always been tagged on into a more developed nation. There's no reason why we shouldn't be there at this point. There's no reason why, because every country started out with zero at one point.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that will get us from zero to where we need to be is innovation, is forward thinking, is thinking 20 years ahead and see what industry are the ones that's going to actually make our populace, make our people grow, live prosperously, have decent jobs, have good infrastructure, have a system where they can actually be entrepreneurs to double create more jobs and be less dependent on a governing system. We tend to be more dependent on our governing system than allowing the people to be free to develop themselves, and by developing themselves, they develop their country.
Mm-hmm.
That system is not in the Caribbean per se. It's moving too slow. United States, for example, Canada, Singapore, all these other countries that have been able to push fast have moved along those lines.
Yes.
And so I just believe that perhaps we need to look at the way in which we select leadership, because even though, we may think leadership is not a big thing, in the Caribbean it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a determining factor in the directions that we go.
Yeah.
We just have to pick leadership that is forward thinking and that is willing to listen to young people. And if they're not willing to listen to young people, the world needs to change. Then young people needs to be in that position,
Mm-hmm.
because the future is for them. It's not for us. We got to let them be a part of that process to build it for the next 10, 20 years down the road. And if they're not a part of that, we're just not going to get there.
I think because, the idea of it being so cliched that the young people are the future, and what you've just shared and you've been so passionate about is, as a Caribbean nation of multiple islands of people, diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, we have such a conglomeration of potential for what it could be. I want to ask you now, Larry, because often, just what you said, you normally aren't always in front of the camera, you are behind the camera. So I feel very privileged to have you be the person that we have this focus on today. Tell us about especially during Caribbean Heritage Month, tell us about the accolades that you have been awarded over the years, and especially your contribution in the media environment here in the United States, here in Washington, D.C. especially?
Okay, Grace, you're putting me on the spot here because I'm not one to talk about my accolade. I always like to leave that
Oh,
to other people, but I'll answer. I'll answer. I was very fortunate this year to be a part of a group of a group of leaders within the Caribbean community that was honored by Institute of Caribbean Study on Capitol Hill a couple of weeks ago. It was a recognition of our contribution to the development of the Caribbean community in the areas that we are. And we had leaders, Caribbean leaders from the DMV, we have Caribbean leaders from New York, from Connecticut, from California, and all over the place that convened, and they were honored and celebrated by the Institute of Caribbean Study in collaboration with the U.S. Congress. So that was one award I was very honored to be a part of. Another award that happened for me this year was just happened last weekend. I worked at a local TV station, a local CBS affiliate TV station, as chief editor, and I was honored to receive 2 Emmys for works that I had helped to produce from last year. One was about the Beltway sniper that terrorized the DMV 20 years ago. We did a profile piece that looked at the events leading up to it, the events during it, and some of the things that came out of it. So we did a fairly real comprehensive look at that piece. Excuse me. And the second award was for another piece that I worked on, and that piece was a piece that so we had a sniper, and so the second piece was a piece looking at the disparaging in Prince George's County, which is a county very close in DMV. There's a thing going on there that a lot of people didn't know about, and it's where African American homeowners would appraise their home and found out that their appraised value for their home would be less than if that same house was appraised by a white owner. And so we investigated this phenomenon where there was a huge disparity between an African American who owns a home in the PG County and a white person who owns a home in the same area, having their homes valued differently. The African American homeowner would be far less than the white homeowners. And so when we start investigating this trend, we found out it's not just in PG County, it's nationwide. And it has been a system that was going on for a while. And we were able to bring it to the forefront with some investigative reporting by a partner of mine, Larry Miller. And we brought it to the point where the governor of Maryland took it up. The comptroller of Maryland took it up, and they're drafting legislation to make sure that this practice is stopped and fairness gets back into the system. Even the White House took it up, and they had a conference on it. And certainly, legislation have been worked on to make this inequity, which is so unfair because of the color of your skin, go away. So one of the thing about these stories that I worked on at Channel 9 is I like getting into stories that made a change for the better, because there are so many things going on in our community, so many things going on around us, that if we don't stay awake and observe them, they're going to continue, and they're going to continue to hurt the people that cannot protect themselves from it. And so as journalists, I believe one of our mission is to look out for people who has been taken advantage of and make it right. Not just do a simple report on it and leave it alone. No, we're going to dig deep, and we're going to find a second story, a third story, a fourth, fifth, until we get that story on the radar of the biggest office in the land, the White House. The White House got the story, and they convene a summit, and they're dealing with it. And they're trying to make sure that this doesn't happen in America ever. So I was
Larry, I
very
want
happy.
to. This has been such an extraordinary opportunity to have, as again, you're being the face in front of the camera or the screen, and to share so many volumes of information as to the media that you've been a part of for over the last 2 decades,
Yes.
and that we get to say thank you as a part of the Caribbean community to you for all that you've done, for all that you continue to do, and for the contributions that, more importantly, you're making across the nation. Larry, again, thank you so much. Thank you for having the presence to allow me to have this opportunity with you. And continued blessings, graces, no pun intended, and welcome celebrations on all your endeavors going forward. Thank you, Larry, again.
Grace, it's my pleasure. It's really my pleasure to talk to you. I've known you for a while, and I've known you to be someone who's also a big part of this community, who have done the utmost, volunteering in many respects to make sure that we uplift our nation, we uplift our people.
Yeah.
Because if we do not do this work, this selfless work, it's not going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do it. And I'm just hoping, if young people are watching this, that they would take heed to people like you and others who are doing the work to make sure that we celebrate our Caribbeanness, that we uplift one another, that we continue to make open up new opportunities for Caribbean people to live and to prosper in the land that we have called our home.
With that, let's say thank you again. Have a great evening. And it's a pleasure to have been your host. Thank you, Larry.